Hello, welcome to this midweek meditation. I'm thinking at the moment about what it means to be a child of God. This is something I'm preaching about on Sunday, so this is very much, as is often the case with the things that I'm talking about in these meditations, some early thoughts on that topic. And probably, as I tend to do when I talk about midweek meditations, I'm probably raising more questions and answers. But in some ways that's deliberate. So what I'd like you to be thinking about is what does it mean to you to be a child of God? And I'm going to talk a little bit about what it means to me, probably more on Sunday. And a little bit about, in terms of the readings that I'm thinking of. So we've got two readings on Sunday, John 1, 1 to 12, and 1 John 3, 1 to 3. I'll say those again. John 1, 1 to 12, and 1 John 3, 1 to 3. And I'm just going to read out little parts of those and just pick out a few things. But just, in terms of context, just before I do that, it's interesting that I'm talking about this topic in between Mother's Day, Mothering Sunday, which was a few weeks ago, and literally just had Mother's Day in America. Sunday just gone, I think, if I've got it right. It might have been the Sunday before. And also we've also got Father's Day coming up in June. So when we think about what it means to be a child of God, it's inevitable that we're going to see that through the refraction, as it were, of our own parental relationships that we've had with our parents, or not, because many of us will have had complex relationships with our parents, both good and bad, or there may be people listening to this who've not had a parental relationship, or they've had very different parental relationships, for example through adoption or fostering. So it's always a complicated one to talk about this. But either way, we see what it means to be a child of God through the lens of those relationships. So just a little bit from John 1, starting at verse 9. And this is the last part of the main gospel for this Sunday. The true light that gives light to everyone was coming into the world. He was in the world, and though the world was made through him, the world did not recognize him. And then this next bit's really interesting. He came to that which was his own, but his own did not receive him. I'll probably talk about that more at some point. Yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. It's not always said as children of God in all translations, particularly older translations, where it tends to be referred to as sons of God. But we're talking about children of God here. Yet to all who did receive him, to those who believed in his name, he gave the right to become children of God. So children of God there as a right that is granted to us by, guess who? God himself. And given that right to us by Jesus as well, through what Jesus has done coming. For those who've received Jesus, to those who've believed in his name, those two things, receiving and believing, we become children of God. And then that's echoed through 1 John 3, 1 to 3 later, which carries on the same sort of theme. See what great love the Father has lavished on us, that we should be called children of God. So the idea that we can be children of God is a response of God's love given to us. Then a little bit later on, now we are children of God, and what we will be has not yet been made. Shall I start that again? Now we are children of God, and what we will be has not yet been made known. But we know that when Christ appears, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. So in the John reading, we have something about receiving and believing. And then in the 1 John reading, we have something about knowing. We have something about knowing. For we shall be like him. For we shall see him, which we don't now, as he is. So there's receiving, there's believing, there's knowing. All the elements there that are in a deep, meaningful and powerful and close relationship. Closer ultimately than any of the relationships that we can be in now. Our relationships now are just a mirror, a reflection, a copy, a poor copy of that, of what we have through God, what we have through Jesus, what we have as children of God. That is being revealed to us in this life, as we draw closer to God. And I've seen this in my own life, as I've understood more and more what it means to be a child of God. And to be honest, that understanding has deepened massively in the last couple of years. You see more of that and who you are as well. But there's also a final bit. I'm going on a little bit here. I'm already at 6 minutes. Don't want to go on much longer. Just a little bit later on, a couple of verses which aren't going to be in the reading on Sunday, but I am going to refer to them. Verse 10 of 1 John 3. This is how we know who the children of God are, knowing again, and who the children of the devil are. That's interesting, that's deep, that's different, there's comparison there, there's contrast, there's difference. Anyone who does not do what is right is not God's child. There's a challenge. There's a deep challenge. There's one I'm sure all of us fail at some points in our life, because I'm absolutely sure that nobody who's listening, always does what is right. But then there's also context there as well, a little bit further on, which is interesting in the context of the world as it is at the moment, and the politics that often lives on fear and division. The last part of verse 10, nor is anyone who does not love their brother and sister. That's a challenge. That's a huge challenge for us. If we want to be children of God, it shows in how we treat those around us, in how we love their brother and sister. So my final thought, and I'm going to go on to this much more in Sunday, so do come along on Sunday, or if you're listening to this midweek meditation after, you want to find on our YouTube channel our 10:45 service for Sunday the 18th of May 2025, if you're listening to this later, because that's when I'm going to be talking about this a little bit more. But to think about what does it mean to us to be a child of God? And I've given you some hints and tips there. But also, where are you on that line, on that continuum, on that relationship, where we're gradually coming from where we were away from God to gradually coming towards God's presence, gradually becoming children of God, gradually doing those things where we are doing what is right more and more of the time. Thank you.